All right, back on the Young Turks. We just got this tweet in right as we were about to do the segment. Of course, we're going to talk about Michael Hastings, great reporter for Rolling Stone, BuzzFeed, and here on Current. He won a 2012 Polk Award for magazine writing and reporting, and then he was a finalist for the National Magazine Award as well. Wikileaks sent this tweet saying Michael Hastings contacted Wikileaks lawyer Jennifer Robinson just a few hours before he died, saying that the FBI was investigating him. So that is very, very interesting. We'll come back to that and talk about what that might mean. But to that point, Michael Hastings had talked about the surveillance state often on air as well. I want to give you a clip where he did that. Let's watch.
When I'm trying to comprehend the fact that there's this massive surveillance state, besides the fact that it makes me uneasy, as a journalist, it shuts down investigative journalism. You know, any conversations, I mean, friends of ours, Barrett Brown, you know, I would talk to him on the phone, and my number is in his phone, which has been seized by the government, and I assumed when any communications I always had with him that they were being, so I was very careful what I said, always in contact with him, because I knew that, you know, they could be recorded. So that's the sort of principle I'm kind of operating on. When I dealt with Julian Assange, it was all through the Tor browser. You know, all this sort of, you know, backdoor, da-da-da-da. But even that doesn't even matter, because the minute it gets to me, unless you're a super savvy, you know, computer expert, it's really hard to protect everybody in this massive surveillance state. And that becomes, all you have going for you is that they have so much information, and they're generally incompetent morons who are bothering surveilling me rather than people who are going to go blow up Boston. That's their problem. Yeah, I mean, not me. I'm not saying I cannot confirm that I have ever been, you know, but except that people tell me all the time, and then, you know, in the special forces community.
So that's fascinating that people in the special forces community apparently telling him that he was being surveilled. Now, guys, let me open it up here.
Look, I'm the least paranoid one here, but do you think for a second that if these guys were looking at James Rosen, that there wasn't some point, some reason to do some surveillance on Michael Hastings?
Was there a reporter in the country who took on the power establishment in Washington more than Michael Hastings?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what we mean when we say surveillance, but I mean, I'm sure there was some.
Oh, I listen, yeah. When I was covering the LAPD Dorner case, and every time a helicopter went overhead, I'm like, that's them. They're coming by to check things out. And by the way, I had a cop tell me that there is a place right here in Los Angeles that is just a warehouse filled with data where they just look for words and cues and emails and phone calls of LA stuff. And I think as a journalist, we kind of expect that, but laugh about it, but think it can't really happen. It shouldn't happen. And you kind of in this ping pong moment.
Right. Ray Kelly, NYPD commissioner, yesterday pretty much admitted that they record the calls. He's like, of course we should record the calls. You know, like if they're doing something like that in LA, and apparently there's doing something more significant
we read,
in New
just
York.
To make that, because I don't, you know, there's no, they can't record all the calls. No matter, they can build the biggest thing in Utah. That's still a TiVo not big enough to handle that much material.
Mm-hmm. But can they pinpoint people like Michael Hastings who are causing trouble?
Well, but the Washington Post reported that what they think the program is that it's a program that transcribes the calls, and then they store that.
It's
so
keywords.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
From what I understand, it's keywords. They load the database with a bunch of keywords, just like they do, you know, with everything else, and then you pull those and you start from there.
Like a keyword might be general, if you're investigating a general,
right.
Or national security, if you're doing a story about them. And look, Michael talked about the war on journalism. And so it's not just that we have a surveillance issue with a Fourth Amendment issue, but it's also an attack on the First Amendment by intimidating the press. Let me go to that clip here.
Today, I sort of realized a lot of this came together in the fact that the Obama administration has clearly declared war on the press. It's declared war on investigative journalists, our sources. You can go down the list now. This wasn't isolated. With you had the AP, basically all their records, all their phone records were taking, and then you go over and you look at what happened to this journalist James Rosen, where we know now that the authorities were following him around, tracking his movements in and out of buildings, looking at his phones. I mean. So anyway, all I want to say, I just one quick point.
Sure.
I think the only recourse to this kind of behavior by the government is to say back to the government, we declare war on you, and from this point forward, we should no longer, as a media as a whole, cooperate in any manner with the government in terms of when we're doing national security stories. We should withdraw all our cooperation, and we should publish everything we know, because it's a free press, and it's not a free except for when the government tells me to do it press. And we've been way too easygoing with these guys. We've let them get away with this for years. We've let them tell us what to print, what not to print. And I say be done with it, and everybody should just get together and fire back, because no one else is going to defend the press.
Now, that guy's dead, and at the age of 33, and so I don't know a lot of other people who are going to step up and have that kind of courage. And if there's one thing that defined Michael Hastings, it was definitely courage. I mean, to be not just to take on the generals, not just to take on the government, but so much of the press sniping at you behind your back because you're embarrassing them, because you're doing your job and they're not doing theirs. And look, to that point, guys, I got to get to it. So, first of all, New York Times obituary on Michael Hastings is problematic. They mentioned that he did the Stanley McChrystal story, of course, runaway general, but needlessly threw in 2 paragraphs on it trying to basically take away from the story and say, well, I don't know if you want to believe Michael Hastings. Now, of course, he's not here to defend himself, so I'll do a little bit of that. First, let me quote one of the paragraphs from the New York Times. The Inspector General's report also questioned the accuracy of some aspects of the article, which was repeatedly defended by Mr. Hastings and the Rolling Stone editors. So, in other words, well, I mean, he wrote that story on General McChrystal. By the way, a story that wasn't really denied by McChrystal, and who stepped down, resigned. The president asked for his resignation. The Inspector General, that's, by the way, the military, the Pentagon, then later decides, oh, no, what we did wasn't so bad. I'm not sure I believe that guy who wrote the most damaging article about us in so long. Oh, well, thank you, New York Times, for being balanced after the guy dies to put that in the story like, come on. You really believe him or our beloved government? I really appreciate that. And if you thought that was bad, wait till you get a load of the tweet sent by Geraldo. Now, Geraldo is a guy that I've been going on his radio show, and we have different opinions on things, but shockingly enough, we've actually agreed on many of the things that we've discussed. And so I've got no beef with Geraldo whatsoever, except for this tweet, which I think is disgusting. He said, reporter Michael Hastings killed in tragic car wreck. Condolences to family, but hard to forget he destroyed career of one of our best fighting generals. Gee, I wonder who's the real reporter here. The guy who's exposing what our generals are actually doing and what we actually did in that Afghanistan war, or Geraldo, who thinks it's his job to defend those generals. You know, you're supposed to serve the American people, not service the generals.
Yeah, look,
and by the way, the one guy who actually harmed our troops by giving away their position, Geraldo, not Hastings.
Yeah, I mean, don't waste your breath defending that. I mean, Geraldo Rivera is just part of a sort of this whole fraudulent media system of which not nearly everybody is involved in, but he is a cheerleader of. And the idea that that's his takeaway from that. I mean, I don't know first of all, if you believe anything about personal responsibility in the world, the general who goes shooting his mouth off about his commander in chief would be the guy who destroyed his own career, not the guy who reported truthfully on what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when Elliot Spitzer does something wrong, everybody says, oh, well, he shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have done it. Ha ha, right? But wait a minute. Now, why did they get his bank accounts for no reason, et cetera, et cetera? Oh, don't worry about it, because he shouldn't have done it. When it comes to McChrystal, can you believe they reported that about poor McChrystal, when all he was doing was conducting a horrible war in Afghanistan, which, by the way, forget all of his indiscretions about what Michael reported on, et cetera. How about the fact that they never honestly told us what was actually happening in Afghanistan? McChrystal would come out, Petraeus would come out. Success right around the corner, right around the corner. Oh, just stay with us. And by the way, McChrystal was also in Iraq. Also the guy who was involved in a lot of the shady things that happened in Iraq, and also told us success right around the corner. It wasn't around the corner. Hastings was one of the few guys who pointed that out. And of course, the lapdog press, which Geraldo is a huge part of. Oh, the government, the Pentagon, the Pentagon. Oh my God, our beloved fighting general. What fighting general? What are you talking about? Of course, they're here trying to demean Michael Hastings after he's passed away to protect their beloved power establishment.
Right.
Congratulations, Geraldo.
Well, and isn't the press that lawful way, that lawful method to whistleblow? Isn't that way that everyone's advocating for right now? Is just, talk about, be open, talk about it, everything, be transparent. If you're a reporter, be a reporter, use your channels. But no, you can't do that.
All right, one last thing. The rest of the press, just stop it. I know you're embarrassed because you suck at your job, and all you do is your Washington press corps, and especially, and ironically, because I'm on TV here, most of the guys on TV, the CNN guys who just, oh, we bring on a general to lie to us. Oh, thank you, General, we appreciate it. NBC, same thing, generals. Hey, I got news for you. The Pentagon's been lying to us for decades. We've proven it over and over, Gulf of Tonkin. After it happens, they say, oh, well, obviously that was a lie. Obviously that was just a giant lie that got us into a giant war. Oh, well, it turns out success wasn't around the corner in Iraq or Afghanistan. But ignore all of that, and the one guy we're going to attack because we're so deeply embarrassed at how bad we are at our job is Michael Hastings, who actually did his job. Well, you're right. You ought to be embarrassed, Young Turks.